This car came all the way from Miami, and he has some key things he wanted doing. He has coilovers, some HKS coilovers, and he has an aftermarket spoiler. And he wanted to basically go over and do maintenance. Well, we have to look at this car like it's our car, which is our slogan. We treat your car like our car. Let me show you what it sounds like. Hear it stumble. Listen to it idle. So because we've got a check engine light, we've got 176,000 miles. The check engine light already verified it. It's got 3 misfire codes and an air temp sensor code. But you hear the motor right here. This is the air temp sensor. We can just pull that in the computer. So this has been removed from here. So somebody's probably been messing with this, and looks like the tab is broken there. So this has probably come loose at some point. But this shaking, this can be a simple fix, it can be an expensive fix. Often when we diagnose things, you're making your best guess based on what you've seen in the past and what you're seeing in front of you based on the data. But you always go with the cheap things first. When I say cheap things, the things that you would do anyway. Spark plugs, valve adjustment, injectors. Then, hopefully, that will take care of some of the issues. It was 1 and 3. So that's 4, means it likes that one. 3, it likes it a little bit. Now the motor sounds really quiet, like a sewing machine kind of quiet. That is usually a telltale sign the valves are a little bit too tight. That should be like a solid stream. See that? That's also a dead sign of a misfire. Now this is new too, the VSA light just came on. So it smooths out when you rev it. You get it back to idle, it's chugga 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 chugga. I can do that again for if you need to verify that. But you bring it up to RPMs, it kind of smooths out. So let's get this thing in, let's start taking it apart, let's show you what we find. This IAT right here, the little clip is broken, so that could be that code right there. Another thing we noticed is the radiator has a lot of evidence of it leaking. We'll look right back here. You can see it. It's actually wet right there. He just drove from Miami, so it's wet there. You see. Let's get into the engine here, see if we can figure out that misfire. Just observation. Somebody has tried to fix this issue because they've already replaced all the coil with these Denso coils. Spark plugs look fairly clean. Number 4 was dark, but the gap is really large.
The gap is actually the absolute maximum of 44.
Okay, so that is hard on coils. Even though the specs would be on the larger side, it's hard on coils when you do a larger gap. Number 4 is really, really dark right here. This is the position that they came out. So again, new plugs. Just as a precaution, these are 4 years old. They're probably fine, but when you're chasing an issue, especially something fairly inexpensive and easy, you do it, it just eliminates that as an issue. I'm going to take the valve cover off and go through the valve adjustment. Going through the valve adjustment is essentially a valve adjustment because you're going through the motions. You may as well adjust them and do it at the same time as checking them. He has a new gasket kit. It is OEM, so we'll use that. If it was aftermarket, we wouldn't, because it would most likely leak, meaning we have to do the job twice, which we don't want to do. Once we do that, we're going to take the injectors out, clean the injectors. While we're doing the valve adjustment, we can do a leak down. That fixes it, because we don't want to go into too much. We don't want to go into the mechanical part of the engine. And I know he doesn't either, because he's excited about his coilovers and his spoiler, as well as any other little fluid that we can do. And then we're waiting to hear back on a radiator. Now, radiators, there is so many radiators out there from $100 to 500. The problem is there's so many knockoff radiators out there, and people will show you a picture of a radiator with the name that you like, and then when you get it, it's not the same radiator. It looks just like it. Not saying it's always bad. I just don't like doing jobs twice, like we mentioned, so we don't want to use the off-brand stuff in case it doesn't work and we have to do it again. If you supply and it doesn't work, well, you pay labor twice. We don't want to pay our own labor twice. We want to do it once and know it is right.
All right, valve cover's off, but I got the trusty temp gun here. We're gonna start looking at this. Okay. We've got some coilovers in the trunk. I'm gonna go ahead and pull them out while this cools down. We need a minimum of 100 degrees to get a proper valve adjustment, so The car did just drive from Miami. It's been sitting for about 2 hours.
Here I'm going to take the injectors out the rail and put them on our flow tester and see if they are all flowing even, and then run some cleaner through them. If everything is good, we'll put it back together.
All right, HKS Hypermax coilovers supplied. Let's see what they look like. All right. Right here, no, nothing in there. All right, they are put together. I'll look at the instructions. I haven't installed HKS in a long time. I don't remember if they come somewhat preset or not. So we'll get that out and look at it. Alright, looking under the car for the exhaust leak, the first thing I see is there's a gap there, so put some PV blaster on the nuts, we'll get the nuts off, clean the surfaces, put a gasket in there.
Always make sure you put this extra clip back in here. It's just an extra retainer for your fuel line. Give everything a tug and make sure it is happy. Let's plug all these in, and always kind of give these a little bit of a tug. Make sure they do snap on nicely. They're not usually an issue, it's usually the coil plugs. It's always nice to give them a check and then snap on your wire harness right here. Do the outer ones first, it's easier.
So upon further inspection, this is cracked all the way through the flange and all the way around. Shine some light in there. So that's actually the problem, not the gasket. I do have it on cylinder 1, and that valve on cylinder 1 it has 0 lash. So I'd like to imagine that even another 10 degrees isn't going to open that thing up. Getting into the back of the car to do the coilovers, it looked like I had a helper trying to help me out, but he didn't get too far into the installation. So I'm going to go ahead and clean up his mess, and I'll get to loosening those nuts. Alright, so I said we'd look at the instructions prior to putting them on, and HKS gives you a full list here of the heights for the front and the rear, the max you can go height-wise, the minimum you can go to lower it, but it also says when HKS ships them to you, there's the heights. It's negative 1.1 drop, front and rear. So if you want it lower than a factory setting, you can go lower. If you want a little higher, you can go higher.
So he's supplied his own valve cover gasket kit. One thing to note, the valve cover gasket kit comes with the seal and the grommets for the top. It doesn't come with these. You're gonna need 4 tube seals, and they're sold separately. There it is right there. So 4 of those, there is the gasket kit right there with said grommets. Should you be doing this?
Yes.
What are you making?
Trained professional.
That one's way bigger than the rest. Look at that.
That's for your information, the headband lights, when I put them in a padded envelope, and these are for greases.
Oh, okay. So you
So
did
headband
you did it.
greases.
Okay, I thought you just messed up your size.
Yeah.
I'll take it back. Don't forget to
Well, you know what?
trying to save power on here.
All right, waiting for the engine to cool down still. Went ahead and installed the coilovers. Get the gun out and we'll check. We're 96, 97 degrees here, so plenty in range to adjust the valves.
Sebastian is now offering 3D tours of the shop. He can drive around a little bit. We'll show you some of this footage a little bit later in the video.
So this is what you need to adjust the valves. This is a actual valve adjustment tool from Blue Point or Snap-on, whichever. You can get them from many places, especially nowadays. And this to check the valve clearance themselves. So we've got 009 for the intake, 011 for the exhaust. That's middle of the road, right in the middle of Honda spec. All right, so like I said, number 1 here had 0 lash. We've got a little lash built in. Now we're gonna go and rotate it to cylinder 3. So what we're encountering here on number 3 is this one is real loose, and this one almost zero lash again. So 1 and 3 having a misfire makes sense with the way these valves are looking. Alright, so cylinder 4, we had 1 tight, 1 loose. Not a crazy amount, probably not detrimental, but they have been adjusted. And so far every intake valve has been on. So the last one is cylinder 2, and on this one, every one is tight. They have clearance, but not near enough. So we're gonna fix that.
I want to see if we can find a replacement plug here, because this tab is just broke. That's not going to stay on there. Bag, clipped. So hopefully we can find one in here. That looks like it. Nice. This is what we used to do with injector clips. When we would find cars with good clips, we would save them, because this is a common problem. Seems like the black ones have more of the problem breaking. This is an injector, but the blue clips on the coils don't have as much issue. So rather than, I'll clean that up in a minute. So rather than soldering that on there and cutting that plug, which will work, but the really slick way to do it would be to remove the pins out of here and repin it onto this, just like we do with our coil clips. That looks a whole lot nicer. We don't have any soldering joints, and it looks like no one was in there. Now, how do you rotate around to show the different angles?
You can just do this.
Ah, ha, ha. See where you've been, where you're going. Does it real time? That is fantastic. That is unbelievable. It's like being on a drone. That is so cool. Did you got some rain right there, right? Very cool, dude. Very cool. I always recommend you do is practice on the old plug, because obviously you're losing that. Good job, buddy. So here's our pins right here. You can see how one pin is higher than the other because this adapter is broke. If you touch this, it just falls apart. Like you see how the plastic is brittle. But right there, very easy. Clip under there, one there, comes right out. So this actually, it doesn't matter the orientation of the colors, because it is a sensor, it's a resistor. But if you want to be really trick, hold the plug the same way, put them back the same way. So what we'll do is leave that one together. Same thing, a little tab right there, screwdriver or your poker under here. If you use the screwdriver that comes with your coil clips, that will work too. That comes up right there. Don't lose this little piece. Right there. You gonna hold that, buddy? Same thing with these clips. A little bit of tension on your wire. Lift that up. There's one. Same thing, a little bit of tension on the wire. There we go. So let's line these up side by side. You'll see that. Hopefully my hand is in the way. So we'll take that and we'll yeet that. This, we will slide that on there, just nice and easy. Make sure the clips come through. All right, now I need that little piece. This is the little lock right here. This should go on right there. Beautiful. I don't think we've ever seen that, have we?
No.
They usually break, and now the brake will break in the cat. Is it under the shield, or can we cut the
whole end?
Yikes. Yeah, you put that in there. Yikes. I don't think we've ever seen that before. Well, cats are really expensive, and this being an 06 or newer car, they're very sensitive. You put an aftermarket cat on there, it'll usually throw a code. If the brick is in good shape, I'm thinking let's cut that heat shield back a little bit.
It's probably not gonna unbolt.
No, it probably won't. Those are probably in there for good. Hopefully we get the O2 sensor out. If not, we can just unplug it. But these look like they will come out. We'll put some special fluid on there. It looks like that gasket is falling apart too. That's not going to be reused. Well, if we can fix it, it's a heck of a lot cheaper than a new cat. New cat from Honda is like $1,000. An aftermarket cat is like 200. You're almost certainly going to get a check engine light from it. So, as long as we're under 900 bucks to fix it. It's a clean brake at least. More light. It's like you said, it's cracked all the way around the flange there. That looks like a job for the MIG. It was a MIG weld, so it might have been bad from the factory if they welded it too hot, because it cracked exactly next to the weld. Yeah. They might have just welded it too hot. This is our MIG welder. I bought this about 15 years ago. Just to give you an idea how little we use it. It's on the same spool of wire as when I bought it. That's the original spool of wire. It's basically one of those things just for tacking. Stick it in the hole, give it a squeeze. So it is a MIG welder, which stands for metal inert gas. Yeah, I did go to college.
Your mom goes to college.
Went to college to be a welder, an engineer, and then when I got out of college, I found out everyone in England is a welder and engineer. So this is also known as a wire feed in the United States. Super popular because you literally can't screw it up. You press this trigger, you point that in the general vicinity, and it welds. If you miss it, repeat step one. Squeeze that, give it a wobble around. You can literally fill a manhole cover with this once you get the hang of it. Don't know why that's on there, but we'll put that. It's already set where it was the last time. So if you're going to do a proper wire feed, you don't use a helmet, George. You use a bottle of beer. You use dark beer. So what you do is you put your thumb over the top of the beer so you don't get sparks in the bottle, and then you look through the bottle at your welder. Ready? Go ahead and give it a squeeze. Just press it and hold it. So now we've got a bunch of this. We just got to cut this back a little bit to about here, and then I'm going to put the camera through the screen, and George is going to give that a good weld. Unless you want to do it.
I don't think I can weld.
It's actually, anybody can do this. I could train a dog to do this. Not our dog.
No, you'd run away halfway.
Yeah, the dog would run away before you actually press the trigger.
Yeah, probably.
Alright, this looks like it's an underwater screen right now. Let's see if it works. Nope.
Don't work.
Be positive, George. Be positive. There you go. You kind of get the idea, right? It's not bad at all, is it?
Yeah, keep the gas inside.
Yeah. That's what we're going to do. All right, so funny story, when Paul first started working here, he'd already done a little bit of MIG welding, and I was teaching him how to TIG. Well, he had a screen similar to this. Wasn't this, it was one of our older screens. Basically, it's battery operated, and it uses an LCD screen to go from light to dark, and you can adjust it. Well, his wasn't working, and I didn't know that. He had a screen on, I have one on. I'm demonstrating it. I'm basically saying, okay, we're going to use this. We're going to build a molten pool, and we're adding now a filler rod as we go. He goes, it's really difficult to see what you're doing. And I go, well, maybe you should try it, and then once you get going, you'll have an idea. Well, of course, the whole thing is going blinding white. He can't see what's going on. He's trying to weld. He's probably thinking, this is like the worst welding process in the whole world. Who wants to do this? So we fixed his screen, and he actually turned out to be a pretty good welder. He picked it up pretty fast.
All right, so about to put the cap back on, wire brushed that side, took the factory gasket off this side, wire brushed it. This is what it was looking like. It's not in very good shape, so we'll find a new one of those. And I went ahead and put one of these generic ones on this side, hoping that helps with the cracked flange. New Honda gasket. All right, so we're all set to go. I went ahead and cleared the codes. Let's see how it sounds. Certainly sounds a bit smoother already. There's no more exhaust leak. Once we let it warm up a little bit, that idle will come down. So we had to check engine light for the intake air temp sensor, but the sensor plug was broken. So there's a good possibility that it might have come off or wiggled loose or something of that nature. So we got that fixed and erased the code, and that should be it. So let's let it warm up and then we'll listen to it a little more. Hope for the best. We'll let it just run. It should get better, but it's really not that bad. It's just a little shaky, but otherwise it's very smooth now. A lot smoother than it was when it came in. So we've got all that taken care of. We're waiting for a radiator to show up because it's cracked.
Right now we're going to install this wing. He ordered this and it was already color matched, which it seems like the color is actually pretty good.
It looks a little darker, but
it does look a little kind of tough.
About it.
Yeah, it's tough in this light, especially when you have like a different angle. So when something sits completely flat with it versus something like this, it'll create shadows. Sometimes the color will look different, or sometimes it'll work. The paint looks nice. This is Laguna Blue Pearl, by the way. Really, really pretty blue. It's very, very similar blue to my truck, which I really like. And it's in nice shape. Glad the engine runs so much better. We're going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. Then we're going to get on the brakes and bleed them. Is that a brake job performed? Looking at it, it's got new calipers, new pads, new rotors, and they look like they're OEM Honda rotors. But whoever bled it maybe didn't go through the proper procedure. So we have our scan tool. We're going to do a bleed with that, and then a manual bleed just to make sure it's 100%. Yeah, depending on the angle.
Where I'm standing, it looks a little dark, but you catch the top of it in the right light, it looks just like it.
Yeah.
So it'll be great.
It doesn't look bad. You able to hold that while you get a mark on it?
Yeah, just press that on that side and then I'll walk over here. So there.
Just to get our corresponding line for our hole right here. So it doesn't have any hardware. I'm going to use basically our dress-up hardware. That way it has the larger washer, it has the fender washer. And again, this is all stainless steel. We'll double check the depth, but the RM6 threads in the spoiler. Nice. All right, once Ernie comes with the tape, we can put that on. Ready? Got it? So it even says on here to do the normal airline brake bleeding, which is kind of what we do anyway. It's the old school way of doing it, but it's 100% foolproof. There's no chance of air getting back in the system. So we're going to do that in the sequence because it only gets you to bleed the front. As you saw, there's quite a bit of air in both. Depending on the angle, like right here, it almost looks purple because of the shadow. You get around here, it matches better. It'll look better in the sun. So he mentioned he had a scrape when he moved. A scrape right on this edge somewhere, right here. I want to hit it with some wax, see if it'll go away. It's definitely softer. We don't want to put too much compound on there because it might be really thin paint. So that's pretty much done. Now we've got to manually bleed. We did get a little bit more air out, especially on the back ones. He was missing one of the bleeder caps, so we have a couple of spares. If ever we do caliper changes or we have a chance, we snag those and put them in our drawer for occasions like this. We're doing the shifter rebuild right here. You've seen us show you this a million times. This is what the foam should look like. This is the spring that sits under the shifter. So this is the new one right here. I want to show you a real quick side by side because this is something we have been seeing occasionally on the higher mileage stuff. We line it up right there. So this isn't a super technical picture right here, but it just shows you the one on the left is the original one. It's lost some of its tension without building some kind of spring tester. it's kind of hard to verify that, but you can see the spring has lost some of its tension. It's definitely shorter. We do measure them, and if they're within spec, we put them back in, and if it needs it, we'll put a new one in. So I just ordered a few of these from Honda. I'm going to put them in the store, and I'm going to put them separately. That way you don't have to buy it. You can buy the master rebuild kit, and if your spring is out of whack, or you just think it is, it's a fairly cheap part. So even if it's just peace of mind, you probably follow our channel because I'm a little bit OCD and I'm a little bit about peace of mind. I might be slightly out of my mind, but we will measure this. I'll give you a measurement in the store, and then you can check yours and order it. Or if you just want to feel better about doing it, just order a new one when you build your master cylinder rebuild. You order it in the store from us, but that just adds a little bit of firmness to the shifter.
If you're doing your connections back here, if you look, there's a blue, there's a gray, and there's a black, and there's a blue and two grays. The blue does not plug into the blue. The gray does not plug into the gray. So if you do that, then your dash goes weird and everything else. Ask me how I know.
Sebastian being helpful to the mill guy. He's doing half the work for him. One of the things he added to his list, he bought the sway bar bushings and end links. We're going to just go ahead and install those and re-grease them. He bought a whole license plate light from Honda. I don't know if his is broken or if somebody didn't replace it. And he asked about aligning the headlights. I believe these are aftermarket headlights. They look really good, but they don't have the branding from Honda on there. But if they're replicas, they should work the same. We'll show you how to adjust those, but basically he said they're pointing too far down. So we'll use basically our cabinet here as a line of reference, and then we will adjust those to try and get the alignment correct. It did bring us a new VTEC solid gasket. We can't really tell if it's leaking, but it's one of those things that while it's here, he has them in the trunk. He asked us to do the car like we would do it. We're just going to go ahead and install it. That is the center piece for the middle cam gear, and that is everything in his bag. What's good is it did supply the Honda coolant. So when you're changing your coolant or adding coolant, make sure you use the newest one. Most of this newer stuff, it will mix with anything. The early green stuff tends to be very finicky unless it is something that you know will mix. Don't try and mix it because it will turn into like a jelly and it'll ruin the radiator and cause all kinds of overheating issues. So if in doubt, use the newest stuff. Here is the license plate light. So I don't think we've ever shown you how to do this on the channel. I'm not sure how long we can make this video about removing and installing this light. Maybe if we drag it out, we can get a minute out of it and show you as much detail as possible, but it's not hard.
If you don't know how to do something and you buy the new part, you can look at the new part and it'll kind of tell you how to do it. So you can see these tabs here lift up. All this does is snap onto the bumper.
Often when you get your car painted too, they have a habit of painting over this. and then you lose all your light output, even though you should just remove it, paint it, then reinstall it. Most of the time it's just the bulb that goes out on these, but because it's replacing everything, may as well just put the new light, the new bulb, and the new lens in there too. Plus it makes it look nice when you see it shine on the license plate. It's nice and clean.
That's the part number for your license plate light.
Yeah, I think I would change that to an LED bulb. They always look nice and white. Plus the police officers would really appreciate that too.
That's nice.
Yeah, it just gives it a really nice fresh look. There it is. Plug it in and line it up with the bumper. There it is. This is the sway bar end link right here. Often if you make turns and you hear a clicking, clunking, often it's these guys. Not always, but it's just one of those quick things to check. Make sure everything is all connected. Make sure this hasn't separated. When you take this off, you'll notice that the joints will be loose over time. The new ones are nice and tight. The bushings are right here. There is a metal band that goes around it. You can see it right there. You remove that bolt, you take that band off, and then that bushing is going to wrap around that sway bar, and the metal band goes back on. Always make sure you grease this. Yeah, really grippy rubber on the sway bar. Not only will it ruin the bushing, it will often squeak, which you don't want your car to sound like an old Ford. Same thing on the back. So one thing is always double check your part numbers if somebody else has supplied you parts. Often there is a noticeable difference like these. You can see the end link is quite a bit longer on the back. We'll do a side-by-side comparison to show you these, but the joints kind of get loose, even if they're not broken. When you put new stuff on, it really starts to tighten up the car, which really makes a big difference. Same thing on the bushing on the back. You're gonna remove those 214s in the bend, and then that bushing should come out for you. Once again, we do want to say a big thank you to you guys. Seriously, we haven't bought a Starbucks coffee in 5 years. We're not bragging, we're just being very grateful. George typically brings us coffee on a Monday and a Friday, so if you give us coffee cards, it's a big, big thank you. We have tried a million different products for penetrating oil. This is just one of those. It works, it's easy to get. You can buy it anywhere and it works. It does a really good job and it's not expensive. Sealing washer. Sealing washer. Sealing washer. Sealing washer. Sealing. 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 Sealing washer. So the engine's running good. Some of the extra little things we didn't charge him for. He came a long way and he was a little apprehensive whether to get us to do things. I don't know if he just thought it was going to get a little bit too expensive. We tried to be very reasonable. Often we do so many things extra for no charge, which is in this case. So we wanted to make it right. We want the car to be 150% better than when he dropped it off. So that's why we do so many little extra TLC things. wanted to drive this, but there's one thing I always talk about, you guys probably get tired of me mentioning it, is the shifter. So one thing that you touch every single day in the car, it gets loose, gets sloppy, it takes away from the car. So the steering wheel, if the steering wheel is in nice shape, it doesn't make any squeaks or rubs, and the wheel is not tore up, the shifter feels nice, positive, the brakes feel nice and firm, just really makes the car, makes a big difference. So quick drive. George already took it for a drive. He took you guys for a quick spin. But I want to make sure this car is as good as it can be. Which now it doesn't have that exhaust sound. It's definitely, give this guy a chance to come out. It's definitely got a little bit more acceleration now. And it's quieter. Quick turnaround. Let's run it back through the other way. Make sure we engage VTEC. Or pop VTEC, as the cool kids say. Let's just get clear of this traffic. Let's make sure. Engage VTEC. It's not really peppy. It does okay. You can just tell some cars are way crisper. It sounds a little lazy. Runs okay, it isn't like it's bad, it just doesn't feel really crisp. It's amazing how many of these cars we drive and how different they are. Often we can get in a car and drive it 25 feet and tell so many issues from that short test drive or just moving it. But this feels nice. There's no check engine light now. Of course, we've fixed the radiator issue. This should be a good car for him because he's going to be driving it more, he said. All right, so this car is going to be so much better. If you like what you see, if you got any ideas, if you got any tips or tricks, or even inspiration to work on your own car, do us a favor, hit the subscribe, hit the like, hit the share. It helps us grow and it helps more people find us. But in the meantime, thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video. Don't forget, enjoy your cars.